How's everybody doing? Howling with the Wolfe is back. Summer vacation edition. NFL is out for recess, vacation, whatever you want to call it. Wanted to get back on and chat with you guys about what's going on in the NFL, what's going on with the Tennessee Titans as they go into the 6-week break. So we'll start it off with topics as always and jump in with questions, and we'll get it popping like that. So I think for me, I'll start off with my three big observations of, I guess, what we saw out in Titans camp over the summer. I think it starts with Marcus Mariota, and I think you look at what he has been doing with his footwork, what he's developed and tried to become in this new offense in Matt LaFleur. And I think there's plenty of reason for excitement. I sort of joked with him earlier in the offseason that, everybody's going to be looking at you now, everything you do, whether it's the knee brace, whether it's the running around. And he said, this is nothing new. So obviously all eyes are going to be on Marcus. All eyes are going to be on what Matt LaFleur does with them. I've actually spent some time over the last few weeks talking to Matt LaFleur, trying to get an idea of, the way he's going to go about this thing, what he feels about Marcus Mariota, and how this offense all going to come together. So I think there is plenty of reason for optimism for Titans fans, but there is some caution because the last few weeks they've looked a little rough getting things going. So I think much of that can be expected, but I think that this will be a fun training camp to see how different this offense looks to previous years under Mike Mularkey. I think the second point that I'm interested to I sort of observed through training camp, and I'm interested to see how it develops, is Mike Vrabel and how he handles this gig going forward. I think that obviously first-year coach, he is coming from that Patriot tree. He has a lot of those branches where it's my way. I'm going to do it my way, whether it's the media, whether it's how he coaches the players. I think he's going to have to learn a lot of lessons coming through of, different what do you do when things get a little rough? What do you do when, a player, doesn't really appreciate the way you're coming at them? And I think that's going to be one of the more interesting points of training camp as we go forward. I think as of now, people are happy with what they've seen from him. I've talked to several players who all talked about how honest he is, how they like his style because of what he can present as a coach and being forthright, and what he's telling players and being truthful and not having favorites. And I think the third thing that I'm really looking at is just the fact that this defense has a chance to be special. And I'm talking about the secondary. I'm talking about the defense as a whole. I know we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Marcus Mariota, Derrick Henry, Dion Lewis, what Matt LaFleur does. And that may impact exactly whether or not they win. If they win more games than they did last season, if they go further in the playoffs than they did last season. But I think the calling card for this team could end up being their defense. I think they have a secondary that could end up being one of the best secondaries in the NFL. That's what they're hoping for, and I think they truly have the potential. I spent a lot of time this offseason with Kevin Byard, with Logan Ryan, with Adoree Jackson, with Malcolm Butler, trying to figure out exactly what makes them click, how they're going to get this going. And I think you look at a unit that has a chance to be really good. That cornerback group is going to be really deep. I think one of the most impressive players, and I wrote this on an ESPN article that came out this morning for all 32 teams, LaShawn Sims. He's the guy who's the number 4 cornerback on this team now, and he was balling all camp, knocking down passes, acrobatic interceptions. He came in hungry, and he wasn't letting the addition of Malcolm Butler, a deeper cornerback crop, get in the way of him trying to eat. So I think that's gonna really help the secondary as a whole, not really having any huge weaknesses in that department as far as what they're gonna do in the DB department. So I think those are my 3 observations. I'll go ahead and open it up for questions. I wrote a story, or there's going to be a story tomorrow on Derrick Henry and Dion Lewis, what we could expect from their backfield, what can we expect from their relationship, and, how they're sort of balancing the inevitable pitting one another against each other. So let's go ahead and hop into questions, and we'll see what's up. What's up, Larry? How you doing? Amanda, how you doing? Larry, I think we need to sign Dez. Let's get into Dez real quick because I think this has been a popular topic. I was asked about it on the radio a couple times when I went on 102.5, and here's my thing with Dez Bryant. I think that obviously he would help the Titans. You know, he presents a proven target for a team that doesn't have a lot of proven receiver targets. But this team needs speed. Dez is a guy who doesn't get a ton of separation at this point in his career. He to me, would make the offense slower. And I think for the biggest thing that I saw out of the Titans offense as far as struggles these past couple of weeks is that they couldn't get separation. And that was the issue last season. There was a lot of times where, you know, Marcus just didn't have anybody open down the field. You're looking and everybody's covered. And you ask why Marcus threw 15 interceptions. Some of it was because of his footwork was sloppy. Some of it because he didn't play well. But some of it because guys just weren't open. And as a quarterback, you're trying to make plays. You're trying to, you know, throw the ball down the field. And if guys aren't open, you got to make a little bit more risky throws. So I think I was a little worried over the last couple of weeks to see that some of those same issues are there. It is important to note that Corey Davis has been dealing with, you know, minor injury. Rashard Matthews has been out too. So their top two receivers have been out. But depth-wise, there are a lot of question marks on whether this receiving group has enough. So I think I would rather see a speed guy in here. If they brought in Dez Bryant, great. You know, they'll make it work. And, you know, I think that it'll help the offense. But I'd rather see them bring in a guy who could stretch the defense, create a little bit more separation, and open up some lanes for a guy like a Rashard Matthews or a guy like a Corey Davis who are more possession receivers. So that's my take on the Dez situation. But, you know, we'll see. These 6-week periods, I'm sure this is when they signed Eric Decker last year in the 6-week period. So I'm still of the opinion that there's going to be another receiver added in here, whether via trade or free agency. Let's see. Justin's asking who won the real life Fortnite game. Yeah, I posted a post on that yesterday, not a story, but just a post. John Thewis, offensive tackle, they signed off waivers, actually won the Fortnite game. From what I understand, there was 13 players that were still alive, and they decided the winner based on a shoot-off they did with the police department, the Metro Nashville Police Department yesterday during their last day of minicamp. They canceled practice, went to the shooting range, learned a lot of safety firearm course with them, and John Thewis ended up being the winner of the remaining Fortnite candidates because of that. So I think the players, I had a player tell me that they found out that he was, you know, the son of a police officer, so they felt like that should have disqualified him. But nonetheless, he's the winner. Taylor Lewan, you know, obviously he's got his contract situation, but he got eliminated earlier this week. So he was one of the big calling cards of the game. He was the one who sort of started to give me the lowdown of the game, but he did not win. It was John Thewis. So let's see. Amanda's asking, does Logan Ryan look different than he did last season? Physically, not a ton. I mean, I think for Logan, he's not going to be the biggest guy. He's not going to be the fastest guy. But what he really helps this team with is his intelligence. He's one of the smartest players on the field. He really understands defenses. He's often the vocal leader on that group, him and Kevin Byard, pointing them what direction. I saw him several times telling LaShawn Sims, hey, line up here, get off the ball, play press versus off-man coverage. And those sort of things are really important to have in your cornerback group. So I think physically, no, he doesn't look a ton differently, but I think he has emerged more into his leadership role. I think, you know, it's hard for me to determine who's looking great and who's looking bad because guys aren't in pads. It's a lot of, you know, running up and down T-shirts and you know, and helmets, you know. So I try not to make any big whooping observations in June saying this guy's going to be better, this guy's going to be worse. But I do think Logan Ryan will play a huge role in the leadership of this Titans secondary, which, like I mentioned earlier, I think has a chance to be a top 10 unit in the NFL. Defense does win championships, and I think the age-old question becomes that, you know, do you have enough superstars to win a title, and do you need superstars? Because that's the one thing I feel like this Titans team may lack is just some elite superstar talent, but there are very few holes on this team, particularly on the defensive side. You look at what they have on the defensive line with Jarrell Casey and Daquan Jones and signing Benny Logan. They drafted Rashad Evans to go along with Wesley Woodyard in the middle. Harold Landry is going to help that edge rush group with Brian Arakpo and Derek Morgan. And like I mentioned, that secondary might be the best unit on that defense overall. So there's very little holes on that back group of the defense. There's not a lot of superstars. Jarrell Casey and maybe Kevin Byard are probably the two closest things to one. But I think that group can really surprise some folks with how well they perform. Let's see. How is Mariota's footwork improved? Okay, so I may do a story on this later in the summer. I'm trying to give you guys an inside look of what they've done. But I think the interesting tidbits, and I'll give you sort of the briefer version here, is that he started working with his personal coaches out in California. He works with Tom House and Ryan Flaherty and a few other coaches out in California. And their plan was to widen his base so that he gets more power and stability in his throws. A lot of times you saw him last season and he would sort of wade and flow as a thrower. So if he dropped back under center, he would wade to the left. And you could see his throws having less power. You could see his throws kind of drifting as he went along. And this was often when pressure wasn't even around him. So I think he needed somebody to sort of get his footwork back ingrained. I think during off-season workouts, we've seen him look natural at times with that footwork. And that's the biggest thing, because you can teach a guy all you want on how to do the footwork, but what happens when chaos happens? And I talked to Mariota, I talked to his quarterback coach, Pat O'Hara, about this, and they said reps is going to be the key. Mariota said he feels great about it. He said if he achieves what he wants to do with his footwork, then he believes that, this could be a really special year for him. So I think that's the biggest thing. Like, Mariota is a quiet guy. He's not a guy who opens up with us about a lot, but he's really opened up about his footwork thing. That's something he's excited about, something that he believes is really going to help him get to that next level as a quarterback. And if that's something he's all in on, then I'm eager to see how it looks on his perspective, because as all of you guys know, we're waiting for the real Marcus Mariota to be revealed over 16 games and to see what that truly is. And I think the Titans have done well to remove all of the ifs from Marcus Mariota. A lot of the question marks were on the coaching staff. Is Mike Mularkey and Terry Robisky holding him back? Now Mike Mularkey and Terry Robisky are gone. He's got a young offensive coordinator who's trying to fit his scheme like a glove, So I think that there are a lot of question marks about the team around Mariota that have been removed. And now it's his time to shine. It's year 4. I know he's a nice guy, but at some point we've got to see him at his fullness. So I'm excited. I think that him being healthy is a big boost for this team this offseason. And as always, everything's going to revolve around Marcus in Tennessee. So that's the answer there. Hopefully that answers your question, Mike. Let's see. Have you seen a lot more dynamic routes to get running backs in space in practice so far? Any comments on observations on the new route combinations? Yeah, again, I'll preface it with my June comments. It's June. June is like fluff month. You see all these articles coming out about this guy's going to be this, this guy's going to be a superstar. It's June. Take everything as a grain of salt as much as you can, because in June, things are going to change rapidly. So I'll tell you this, off the running backs, Dion Lewis looks special. I see why everybody in New England loved him. He's not a small guy. I think we often confuse short with small. And I actually wrote an article talking about some of this that's going to run tomorrow. But he is a guy who is very quick, a very versatile player. And I think he's going to really help the Titans offense. I think you'll see running backs line up as receivers more. I think you'll see times where Derrick Henry and Dion Lewis are on the field, and most likely Dion Lewis lines up as a receiver and Derrick is playing some running back. I think you'll see some times where there are series where Dion Lewis is the lone running back and he's the running back on the field the whole time. I think you'll see series where Derrick Henry's the running back the whole time. As far as dynamic routes, I think that you'll see a lot of simpler routes. I think you'll see more screens. I think you'll see a lot more angle routes, which means the running back comes out of the backfield, comes up, and then hits across the middle of the field about 5 or 10 yards. I think you'll see a lot more routes that'll help Mariota out to see his receivers when they come open, whether running backs or receivers. And as far as the route combinations, I think we haven't seen a ton of like a diverse 3 or 4 receiver route combinations, but I think that's by design. I think a lot of the schemes last season were a little bit more complex than they needed to be. And I think you'll see a simpler route combinations. I think you'll see easier routes for receivers to run. And I think you'll see easier routes for Mariota to process throughout the scheme. I think right now, one thing we are noticing with the offense as a whole is that it's a wordy offense. It's a West Coast scheme, so a lot of learning going on. Sometimes the offense looks sluggish. Sometimes guys are looking to the sidelines trying to figure out what the play call is. So I'm not worried about that yet because it's June, but that is something to watch in training camp as it goes along. Who really grasps the offense? It's not an easy offense to learn. It's a simple, as far as the complexity of what players are asked to do. But as far as the amount of nuance in the offense, it's more difficult than a traditional offense. So I'm eager to see, this Corey Davis, the Taywan Taylor pick up these type of schemes and know exactly what they're running so that they're on the same page for markets. All right, Justin. Yeah, I think you're referring to that Titans game. Yeah, I think it's cool team building. I mean, like I mentioned, June is fluff month, so if you can have fun with guys, then I think that's a good basis for you to roll off of. Justin, what's up, Cam? Is Dodd waiting to get released? Dodd obviously is a big storyline here. I know you guys probably saw the video that came out from another reporter on Kevin Dodd and just sort of figuring out what's going on in his spectrum. He obviously didn't show up for voluntary OTAs. He has been a disappointment in his first 2 seasons here. And the Titans are trying to give him another chance. They're trying to figure out exactly what his mental base is. Does he really want this thing? Is he still going to be a player? I think training camp will be essential for Kevin Dodd. He's came back bigger. He's probably 10 or 15 pounds bigger than he was last season. He's playing a lot more on the defensive line. I anticipate him being more of a defensive lineman or at least a hybrid player than a true edge rusher if he makes the team this season. And then that goes to your question, Justin, is he waiting to get released? I think if the team was going to release him, they would have did it already. I do think that his roster spot is definitely in jeopardy. And as of now, I don't know if he's going to be able to make this team. He's going to have to impress. You've seen guys like Aaron Wallace have a really good offseason so far. Obviously, Harold Landry and Derek Morgan and Brian Orakpo are going to make the team. So I think Kevin Dodd's going to have to win that number 4 outside linebacker spot or, a number 4 or 5 defensive line spot for him to make this roster because he hasn't been a contributor on special teams. So I think he's really, really in danger of missing this team. And that'd be a huge disappointment for a guy who, was drafted in the 2nd round 2 seasons ago. But hey, you miss some. You miss some, and I think John Robinson would be the first to tell you that, hey, you're not going to be able to get every draft pick right. And I'm sure as at this point, if he had a chance to do that one again, he would pick somebody other than Kevin Dodd. It is what it is. Let's see, Larry. That's why we need some superstars. Got to get the dog off. The offensive line going to give time. Yeah, all right. So we'll get into the offensive line, and Phillips asking about Jack Conklin. We'll do this sort of together. First thing first, they need to pay Taylor Lewan. I will say that going forward, that's sort of been my stance since February. I wrote a story based on saying that he should be his next extension. John Robinson is a smarter than me. He knows exactly how he's handling these finances, but that's one thing that is puzzling me. I don't know why Taylor Lewan hasn't got his check yet. He's a top 5 left tackle in this league. He's going to be the highest paid left tackle in the NFL, and the price is only going to go up. Zach Martin just got $40 million guaranteed, and he's a guard. Taylor Lewan is going to be looking. I know for a fact because I talked to him about it. He looks at all these deals, and his eyes get wide, and he's like, "Okay, I need more than him. I need more than him. I need more than him." And if this is the guy that's most vocal player on the Titans, one of the faces of the Titans, heavily promoted in the draft coverage, heavily promoted in this franchise's personality. It's a small market team. They need personality, and he's the biggest personality, chugging beer off catfishes, being everything that this Titans team wants him to be. Obviously, he's a little rough around the edges, but he hasn't gotten much trouble while he's been here. So yeah, I think he's a guy that needs to be paid. I'm really surprised that it hasn't been done yet. And I'd be really, really surprised if it's not done by training camp. Because if it's not, then there's going to be a rough. I can't imagine this team without Taylor Lewan. So I think that's an issue that's a little bigger than Titans. The Titans or people around him want to give credence. I'm not really worried about him missing minicamp, but I am worried about him getting a long-term deal. Because if he starts going into this year without a long-term deal, then if I was him, I'd just say I'm going to hit free agency. And when you hit free agency, everything opens up. Nate Soldier got $15.5 million a year in free agency. Taylor Lewan might be pushing 18, if he hit free agency. So that needs to be done yesterday. As far as Jack Conklin, we haven't seen him this offseason. He's the one guy as training camp starts that you probably won't see on the field to kick it off. But I do think that he is a player they're still aiming for week 1 with. I think the ideal circumstance for Jack Conklin is that you get him on the field at some point towards the second, third, fourth preseason game, get to see him in a few reps, and then you get him back on the field for week 1. I think they'll have Dennis Kelly ready just in case they need to put him on the PUP list. He had surgery in January, so that would give him about 8 months if he's back September for that Miami game. So I think right now we don't really have a full frame of whether he'll be back for week 1, but I wouldn't imagine him being on the field for a ton of time during training camp. As far as the rest of the offensive line, I am a little curious on seeing how this interior of the offensive line plays. They didn't do a ton to upgrade that position. We saw Josh Klein get the big deal. They brought Quinn Spain back. Kevin Pamplin's brought in to really compete with Quinn Spain. But I think that they should have added a little bit more on that offensive line area. Maybe they'll be okay moving to a zone scheme. But I think there's a little bit more question marks in that offensive line than I would like to see from a team like the Titans. Let's see. I'm excited about the Lewis-Henry combo. Then you'll love the story that's coming out on ESPN.com tomorrow that I wrote. Check it out. It's going to be up probably by 8 a.m. tomorrow. Everything you need to know about the Lewis-Henry combo, their relationship, what they should expect touches-wise, how they're different, how the Titans plan to use them, Matt LaFleur, and what his ideas for both of them in the scheme are. That's going to be coming up tomorrow, so definitely look out for that. Who has stood out to you at the receiver position so far? We haven't seen much of Corey Davis. We haven't seen much of Rashard Matthews. Taywan Taylor and Tajay Sharp have both flashed, not as much as I've wanted them to, but they both flashed. Tajay Sharp had a really good practice in training camp a couple days ago. He made a touchdown grab, a couple grabs over the middle. Taywan Taylor, I talked to receivers coach Rob Moore, and he said Taywan Taylor has the potential to be a really good receiver. He said his speed has surprised him even more than he expected. And then as far as undrafted guys have flashed in and out. I was really excited about Dante Burnett, the guy at USC, and he's had a few strong days, but he's also had some days where he's dropped some easy passes, and he hasn't been on point. So, Jordan Veazey, I believe, is a big guy, number 87. He's about 6'4", another huge guy who was flashed as well. But he's also a guy who's been a little inconsistent too. So I think those are two guys who have a chance to, contribute and make the team. But they got to have more consistency as we get into camp. Let's see. I talked about the UEFA receivers right there. And Malcolm Butler. Can you comment on Malcolm Butler's rep in practice? I think Butler has looked good. I think he's trying to gel into the scheme. It's a new scheme, obviously. He's had some pass breakups. I haven't seen him get beat tremendously. Honestly, I haven't seen a ton, good or bad, from Malcolm Butler, and that's not a bad thing at this point. Like I mentioned, it's June. So I think for him, he's going to want to get down to defense. He's had a busy offseason from the Super Bowl stuff to free agency to getting here in Tennessee and getting his feet wet. So I think for him, just getting comfortable in what the Titans have going on is his big next step. So I think that, nothing to worry about Malcolm Butler right now, but I can't say that he's had a great offseason per se, for whatever that's worth. I'll take a few more and then we'll get out of here. As always, thanks for joining us. This Howling with the Wolf thing is something that I think I'm going to start to expand a little bit more. Do some player interviews on here. Do a little bit more outside of just a particular team. So I think this summer I'm gonna kind of figure out exactly how I want to expand this. But I always thank you guys for coming on and just chatting some football. It's fun for me to chat, and I think it's hopefully good information for you guys to learn about your favorite team. So yeah, may do one or two more of these before training camp, but I'm going to take some vacation time. I'm getting married, doing a lot of things going up. So it's going to be this is sort of the swan song for a little bit, at least initially for me. So I'm going to answer a few more questions. As always, you can catch me on at Twitter at Cameron Wolfe, and always read my work at ESPN.com. So thanks guys for supporting, and I'll answer a few more, and then we'll get out of here. Houston, how is the depth in our safety position looking? That's a good question. I think that's something where Dane Cruikshank, the 5th-round pick out of Arizona, is a player that is going to be one of the more interesting players to watch in training camp because he's expected to have a significant role in this team. He's competing for that number 3 safety position, him and Kendrick Lewis. Kendrick Lewis had an interception, I think, what was that, Wednesday in minicamp off a tip pass, and he knows Vrabel's system a little bit. Cruikshank is a guy who's converted from cornerback. He's going to take a little bit more time to develop. But I think one thing you'll notice is that I expect that the Titan season goes on, they'll play nickel and dime coverage with more heavy cornerbacks than heavy safeties. Sorry if I'm getting a little bit too football-y for folks, but what I mean by that is that when you go to a nickel or dime coverage, you bring an extra defensive back or extra 2 defensive backs on the field. And I think that because of their cornerback depth, with Malcolm Butler, with Logan Ryan, with Adoree Jackson, with LaShawn Sims, and even Ty Smith as a cornerback 5, I think that there will be situations where they go with 4 cornerbacks on the field and maybe 2 safeties in a dime coverage. Or, at a nickel coverage, obviously they'll go 3 cornerbacks and 2 safeties. So I think the importance of a 3rd safety may be lessened because of their cornerback depth, but I think that Dane Cruikshank and obviously Kendrick Lewis will play an important role competing for that 3rd safety spot for depth, and if an injury happens. Jonathan Cyprien missed, I believe, 6 weeks last season with a hamstring injury, and obviously Denoris Searcy stepped in that role. Denoris Searcy is in Carolina now. So somebody else has got to be that guy that is willing to step in and able to step in if somebody gets hurt. And right now, I'm not sure if it'd be Lewis or Cruikshank, but I'd be a little worried if I was the Titans if I had to go into that situation. Cornerback depth, great. Safety depth, a little bit skittish. I think Jonathan Cyprien has actually looked pretty solid in camp, and Kevin Byard has looked very Kevin Byard-like. But beyond that, I've got to see a little bit more. If that's it, I think I'll start to close it, start a podcast. Maybe that's next on the agenda. I think I want to master this video Howling with the Wolf vlog thing. If you guys notice, I got this Wolf Pack shirt. I think I may do a little bit more branding, maybe have a T-shirt. Would you guys be interested in T-shirts or anything like that with the Howling with the Wolf? So that I may start something along that route. So as far as a podcast, that may be a little bit later down the line, but definitely stay tuned on my Howling with the Wolf stuff, and we'll continue to evolve that in the coming months. So I'll answer this last one or two on these rookies, and then we'll close it out on this Friday. So Brandon's asking about Rashaan Evans. Is he not coming along as expected? And then Nick is asking about our first 2 draft picks, Evans and Honor Landry. First of all, Honor Landry just got signed, so now all the draft picks are signed, which is good for the Titans because they don't have to worry about training camp holdouts like with Corey Davis last season. Good to get that taken care of. As far as Rashaan Evans, it was interesting to hear Mike Vrabel say 2 days ago that Rashaan Evans hasn't shown enough to this point to start on this defense. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think that, it takes a little bit more time for rookies to do what they can. I think you've seen him thinking a little bit more. You can see some of his natural ability to cover and to be able to hit the line. But I think at times he's looked a little bit indecisive. He's looked a little bit hesitant. And, honestly, Jayon Brown has looked better than him at this point. And that's not, it's June. So like I said, I don't want to make any sweeping observations. But I think if he gets into his playbook, if he really understands what the scheme is, he comes back, he gets some pads on, he can hit somebody, pop somebody in the mouth, then you'll see the Rashaan Evans that really made the Titans excited enough to trade up for him. I'm not really worried about Evans at this point, but it is noteworthy that, he hasn't progressed to the point where Vrabel's going to say, hey, we're going to throw him into the fire and he's going to be a day one starter. As far as Honor Landry, and as a side note, I don't think he's a fan of the Honor Landry nickname, but it is what it is. He got coined with it. I think that he has shown glimpses. The one thing I am a little curious about with Honor is that at times it seems like he can turn it on and off. And it's practice, it's June practice, so guys may have a tendency to do that. But sometimes I see him come around the edge and he's like a villain. He's looking like he's gonna kill the quarterback, and you're like, this guy can be really special. And then sometimes if he doesn't get his initial burst, he'll turn off the engines. So I think I want to see a little bit more of full throttle Honor Landry as training camp comes up. But I think he's, like I've said before, I love the pick. I love that they were able to get him in the second round. I would have loved him in the first round. I think that he's going to be a really strong